Oh, good evening, everyone. This is Bob Gomes bringing you the Concerned Forum. And I am here in Africa and I am basically making commentary on what's going on back home. I say back home, I'm from New York and I came over to the African continent to get married and try and start a business. So we have that part taken care of. I would like to ask when you see this on YouTube, if you could give your comments, the little checky thing, whether you like or dislike, and if you want to throw in a comment, pro or con, that's fine. I have no problem with that because it takes all kinds of folks to make a world. All right. So let's get to it. Today, the president of the United States, or I guess according to the time zone, maybe it was yesterday. I don't know. I know I'm like 8 hours ahead of New York, so whatever, right? But this damn fool went to Davos and Switzerland, and he made a perfect, I mean, pure, perfect asshole out of himself. I think that decent Americans actually believe that they are ashamed of being American. Now, let's not, let's not play around with that. When I say ashamed, what I'm talking about is that people who love what the United States is supposed to stand for and then had to witness this baboon dancing across the world stage, yeah, that's shameful. Okay. And that's what I'm referring to. Before we go any further, let me also say that in my last broadcast, or I should say video, I'm still back like in 1930 something, right? But my last video, I made a comment. I said that Hakeem Jeffries and the rest of the Democrats were a bunch of pussies. Now, let's not get this twisted. I understand that my female uh, viewers might take offense at my choice of words, right? I'm out of New York, just like I came. I'm out of home, and we have a way of basically putting the language right out front. I didn't say that as an attempt to disparage Joaquin Jeffrey's manhood. All right. However, I will say that unfortunately, the Democratic Party over the last 10 years you got a reputation for being a bunch of punks. Okay. And perhaps that is the vocabulary that I should have used. Okay. Now, I'm not letting Hakeem off the hook, right? Because even though he's not my congressman, he's from Brooklyn. I'm from Manhattan, Harlem. Okay. However, whenever you sit in Congress, I don't care I don't give a damn if you're from Iowa. It reflects upon what happens in the rest of the United States. Okay, when you vote to go to war, and you happen to be from a little district in Iowa, you're not just sending kids from Iowa. You're sending kids from New York, from Frisco, from L.A., from Chi-Town. And I think that more of our Democratic elected officials need to be aware of that. Okay? I think the biggest problem now, especially among working class people, is they, meaning the Democratic Party in America, are they going to finally stand up and fight for working class people? That's what it's all about. See? One of the reasons that we have Donald Trump sitting in the White House is because people look down upon the Democratic Party for being a bunch of punks. You know, Hakeem, my brother, I'm sorry. All right, but that's how people in the street feel. Okay? Now, I vote a Democrat. I've been voting Democrat all the time since like 1980. But I understand why some people feel that voting for Democrats is basically voting for people that who are not going to go out there and fight for you. And see, that is the problem. That's the situation that we were in 2024. Now, I'm intelligent enough and I'm educated enough and I'm knowledgeable enough to understand that even though Ms. Harris did not run a good campaign, I also am intelligent enough to understand that she had certain things that basically tied her hands. You know, she was Biden's vice president, so on and so forth. She inherited a whole bunch of people from his crew, and that didn't work. Okay. And she was the one that, basically caught the static from it. However, I knew that voting for her was a more sane choice than voting for the orange bullshit artists. See? Unfortunately, we have as a nation, we have allowed our politics to be taken over by a bunch of red hat ignorant bastards. Okay? I mean, there's no two ways to put it. And I realize that some people might hold it against me because I'm a bit profane. My language is a bit profane. But listen, we are living in profane circumstances. Okay? As I'm talking to you, as I'm speaking with you, I'm listening to Billy Joel from his album New York State of Mind. I do that because I have to keep my sanity. Why is that required for me? Not because I find being in Africa so disagreeable. No, that's not the case. I do it because I see what's happening back home, where you have a paramilitary federal force beating pregnant women in the street and snatching little babies out of daycare, right? That taxes my sanity, okay? Because when I use profanity, I use it because what I see in front of me emanating in the United States is profane, right? Now, we got a president, he's already burned down those guardrails. Remember, when you're talking about Donald Trump, when you say you support Donald Trump, you are supporting a man that denigrates, belittles, and tries to humiliate handicapped people. Now, who does that? Where I come from, we saw a guy one time trying to rob a blind man. Know what happened to that guy? He wound up in a garbage can with his legs broken. Okay? And I don't, these not, we're not talking about choir boys here. We're talking about regular guys. But for some reason, it seems that America has lost her decency. And I know that I'm going to get a lot of controversy for this, but you folks down south, to a large extent, you are the cause of this, right? States like Alabama, Mississippi, Arkansas, places like that, Oklahoma, all you so-called red states, you know who I'm talking to. The ones where nobody graduates from high school, where health insurance and health care are like non-existent, okay? And where the infrastructure doesn't exist. And that takes me to something here. That takes me to the point that America is unique because America is one of the few places I know of in history where people are willing to torch themselves, torch their future, torch their children's future because they're trying to hurt someone else. Now, you know as well as I do that most people voted for Donald Trump because the idea of a black Asian woman being president scared the shit out of them. You know that, I know that. And if it didn't scare them, it repulsed them so much So look, I think truth, truth is like soap. Okay, it cleanses. All right, and what the United States of America needs right now is a cleansing with truth. Okay, so let's be honest about it. It has nothing to do. I hear people say, "Oh, well, the Biden economy, it was so bad, and things were, I couldn't afford eggs and all this other bullshit, right?" Well, guess what? Let's look at the facts and figures. All right, look at the facts and figures. The economy was more affordable before Trump came in the White House than it is now. So who in the hell actually believes that this whole thing was about the economy? I tell you this. If you're going to talk about the economy, what you're saying is that you would rather trust a convicted criminal, a convicted sexual abuser, a convicted thief, right? You'd rather trust him than a black Asian woman who had been a district attorney, who had been a state's attorney, who had been a state United States senator, and who was the United States vice president. And this is what you tell the world, right? We would rather trust a convicted sex abuser and criminal. Well, that's kind of dumb, right? I mean, because a sex abuser, he's already a criminal. So what you're saying is that we would rather trust a criminal, okay, than a black woman with all the proper credentials. I don't think that a lot of white American votes, I don't think you understand what you're telling the world. I don't think you understand what that says about you, what that says about America in 2021 as a country. And now I see most of these same white Americans that wouldn't trust the black lady. They're all over the internet wailing and crying about, oh, well, my electricity, I can't afford my electric bill because Trump cut the subsidies, right? They helped me pay my electric bill, right? Oh, I can't keep my mom or my dad in the nursing home because the Medicaid cuts, right? I can't afford to feed my kids when they go to school no more because my SNAP benefits and all the other stuff that I had to go along with that's been taken away because of Trump. Now, I'm going to say this, and yes, there are a few exceptions in the Republican Party. Unfortunately, very few. But I'm going to tell you straight up, okay? Listen, you a working class person, you vote Republican, you're a goddamn fool, okay? And take it from me, I don't claim, I mean, I worked, almost a half a decade in intelligence. I had a cosmic top secret clearance with DIA, access to the White House, NSA, CIA, the whole movement, okay? But I don't claim to be an expert uh, for the most part. I do not. However, when it comes to the Republican Party, yeah, I'm an expert. Okay, reason being because I grew up in the Republican Party. Okay, my old man was the vice president in charge of the Republican Party in West Harlem. Okay, so I've seen the changes that have happened to the Republican Party. Okay, and I tell you quite frankly, it's very sad. It really is. Understand something. This Republican Party, and I keep trying to tell people this. Listen, man, this ain't the Republican Party. This is an embryonic neo-Nazi party because the Republicans allowed themselves in the late 70s, going into the 80s. They allowed themselves to pick up the trailer park trash. Okay, a lot of disenchanted, angry, bitter white guys who couldn't make it and who wanted to blame things like DEI or affirmative action. That's what basically gravitated. And let's not forget the Jewish conspiracy, right? This is the garbage that the Republican Party brought into its wings. And we're feeling the effect today. Now, I'm not saying that Donald Trump was the cause of all this, but what I am saying is that he is the symbol of the deterioration of the Republican Party, okay? And America is now paying the price. Listen, I saw that son of a bitch on the where they at now in Davos. Okay, if you as an American watched Trump's presentation in front of the leaders of the industrialized world, if you are not ashamed of the performance put on by that American president, if you are not ashamed of the pure idiocy that Trump showed, okay? If that doesn't make you feel ashamed, if that doesn't make you feel sick, I don't think there's too much that could be said for you, right? The only people that find themselves enthralled behind Donald Trump and his insanity are two types of people. One, those red hat ignoramuses that you used to see being interviewed in front of those Trump rallies, and the other, those corporate titans and some techno giants, right, who support Trump because they know that he's going to keep sucking money out of the working class here in America, and somehow it will wind up in their pockets, like Elon Musk. Those are the only two groups, okay, that that I can see who will really who have gravitated. Yeah, I believe that's the right word. Gravitated. To Trump. Seriously, because I'm going to tell you something. If you are a working class person, and yes, let's get racial. If you are a white working class person, especially if you are a white working class woman, let me assure you of something. Donald Trump don't give a shit about you. He don't give a shit about you feeding your babies. He don't give a shit about your health care. He don't give a shit about your children's future. Okay, I saw something, what was it? Like, at least 40% of American white women voted Republican. My question to you, are you crazy? Seriously, are you bloody well crazy? See, this whole thing that we're going through now, and I know, look, I'm not a religious person. I mean, grew up Roman Catholic, altar boy, even thought about going studying for the priesthood. Okay, but now as I'm older, I realize I am not a religious person. I have immense respect for the present Pope, and I had immense respect for the guy who was there before him, Pope Francis. Okay, and between those two, I tell you honestly, I have actually thought about going back to the Catholic Church. But, well, the reason I stopped being a Catholic in the United States is because I felt more welcome as a Catholic when I was in the Navy and I was, going to Italy, Spain, England, what have you. I felt more welcomed as a Black American Catholic than I ever did in the United States, quite frankly. And the reasons for that is because I was in the church when I was a kid, when I was like in the 60s, early 70s. It was a different American Roman Catholic church that actually fought for justice. And I can remember the marches, the demonstrations, the marches. I can remember Roman Catholic priests and Episcopalian priests being beaten. I think a couple of them were killed out there marching with Martin Luther King. But unfortunately, in the 80s, the American Roman Catholic felt because of sexual politics that they made common cause with the right wing evangelicals, who for the most part are complete assholes and ignoramuses. Okay? The last intelligent, decent evangelical in this country was named Jimmy Carter. Okay? So that's, just a brief background as to where how I feel, why I feel the way I feel. And for the last several years, I've been associated with the universal, um, the universal church, um, the how should I say, the church that's a direct descendant of the what do you call them, the New Englanders, people like Thoreau, folks like that. And those are the meetings that I have attended. I have a spiritual side, which I'm not going to delve deeply into, because as an American, I really feel it's no one's goddamn business. But that's how I feel. My association with the Unitarian Church is my business, right? And I think that that's something else that we have gotten away from. That's one of the things that I agreed wholeheartedly with George Bush Sr. And that is that all this, evangelistic bullshit, right, has no place in American politics. We have, as Americans, we're supposed to have a certain code, okay? And that is that we allow everyone to to express their own personal religion until it tramples across their neighbor's front lawn, so to speak. It was it's freedom of speech until you step up in my face and you get in my nose, right? Well, that's the same way it's supposed to be, quite frankly. Um, yes, America is built upon faith, but that's everybody's faith, okay? And what the Republican Party allowed, it allowed all these nuts like Jerry Falwell and these Ku Klux Klan people to basically come into American politics and dictate what our faith was supposed to be. And that's what we're suffering now. And see, that's a big problem with Christianity in America because they talk all this bullshit. Oh, the gay people, oh, the trans people, oh, the immigrants, right? They ain't no, with a very small exception, there are no Christians in the United States. They cry about, oh, well, Christians are being attacked. No, Christians aren't being attacked. I think that Christians are kind of self-destructive because to me, I'm trying to figure out how in the hell are you going to espouse the belief that you support and are a follower of a religion that preaches peace, brotherhood, service to humanity, but by the same token, anybody that don't look like you don't want them in the goddamn country, right? That to me, that's a long way off from the Christian ethic, quite frankly. But see, that's my thing. Okay. You don't got to agree with it. You don't even have to like it. But that's what America is supposed to be about. So now we got Trump to, to move the conversation along. We got Donald Trump basically telling Europe, hey, you know what? Since 1947, you guys haven't done jack shit for the United States, right? This is the President of the United States, right? Now, when Harry Truman made that treaty, ran it through Congress, then signed it, okay? It wasn't, the idea wasn't, well, yeah, we're going to do this whole Marshall Plan NATO thing, just to benefit ourselves, right? Now, it did benefit the United States greatly, okay? But the problem is that you got to, what is it? I would say like about 25, 30% of loud, ignorant, and you had red hat wearing bastards back in the, 40s and 50s, okay? At that time, fortunately, you have people with better sense, all right, that basically were able to tamp that bullshit down because they had just finished through World War II. And yeah, the world and the regulations that America basically, remember this whole thing about NATO and, economic international policy and all this good stuff, this was set up by America. We set this shit up, right? And for good reason. Because the world had just gone through World War II. They had just witnessed the nuclear devastation of Nagasaki and Hiroshima. And they said, yo, man, we got to do something to make sure this shit don't happen again. Because if it does, maybe none of us will be around. What did Einstein say? World War III, or was world before it was sticks and stones? And that's what the whole thing about the Marshall Plan and Marshall Plan and NATO was all about. See? And Trump, what was it, yesterday or the day? I don't know, I got my time screwed up here. But he goes up in front of the leaders of the industrialized world and he says that, oh, well, none of this should help the United States. Okay. And then he says, oh, well, Russia won World War II. And, I don't understand how a guy gets away, how he manages to become president of the United States, and he doesn't know a goddamn thing. And see, that should break at least one illusion that Americans have. Just because somebody has a lot of money and a position, it don't make them smart. Okay? I tell you quite frankly, Donald Trump is the dumbest bastard we've ever had sitting in the White House. Okay? Now, I mean, we had people like Woodrow Wilson. What was Woodrow Wilson? He was a college professor. He was a fucking racist, but he was intelligent, right? That's why he tried to come across it, try to create the League of Nations. You got Donald Trump. This asshole don't know jack. Which, by the way, for all you rich folks out there, think about what you leave your kids. I would suggest that you make sure that they get some kind of education. Because folks, you know as well as I do, Donald Trump never had to pass a course, right? What do they call him? Gentleman C or D or some shit like that? So this clown ever had to do? He knows nothing. Nothing. You ask him a question. What was the significance of the Declaration of Independence? Hey, he said some weird shit about it was some kind of love document. And I'm like, my God. If I was in the sixth grade and wrote that shit down, Sister Mary St. Raphael would have bounced me out my ass and bounced me out the door. Would tell me go stand down there at the end of the hallway. This is what you have for the American president. I'm sorry. I'm not going to sit up here and talk about or use the maybe legalistic or academic language, screw this. Because most of the people that vote, they don't understand it anyway. Especially after over the last 30 years, because between corporate America and the Republican Party, they have done such a great job dumbing down the American electorate. So when you're trying to talk to people, you got talk like a regular person. And quite frankly, doesn't mean that you got to be ignorant, okay? But you can communicate basic facts, right, and information without talking above people, which is something I hope the Democratic Party. I see that a lot of Democrats are starting to agree with me on that, right? They're talking to people like regular people, quite frankly. Um, we have a situation now where we have an ignoramus with mental problems sitting in the White House. Now, you look at what's happening, let's go from Davos to Minneapolis. We have a president of the United States that wants to declare war on his own cities. See? And this whole immigration bullshit was exactly that. Okay, everybody started crying. Oh, you got these brown people coming from Mexico into the Southwest and so on. Hey, guess what? If you went to school and opened the book and stopped sitting your ass in front of Fox Network all the time, then you would know. That shit's been going on for like what, the last 10,000 years? And the arrogance of Americans, of some Americans, is that you think that just because you stage a phony war, which it was, right? Don't take my word for it. Talk to Abraham Lincoln. Better yet, talk to Ulysses S. Grant. Okay? And you think that because you did that, that it somehow the whole globe of history is just going to come to a complete halt. Okay? That's the first problem. Second problem, and this shows the hypocrisy of the Republican Party. How many, business owners, corporations, what have they been fined or sanctioned or locked up for hiring people without proper so-called documentation? No, they don't do that. So what should that tell you? Number one. Uh, Number two, any Irish or Italians or Polish out there? Hmm? A lot of you folks out there who happen to be in one of those ethnic groups, uh, you forget where you come from. Okay? How many millions of Irish came to the United States between 1845 and 1900? And please don't give me that bullshit about, oh well, my folks came over here, they were legal. Oh, horse shit. Before the 1880s, nobody really gave a good goddamn if you had papers or not. You came here, and if you proved you've been around for what, 4 or 5 years, you could vote. Right? Simple as that. Okay. Don't take my word for it. That's called American history. Okay? And if you're Italian, and I love the Italians. I went to school with a whole bunch of them. I'm St. Thomas the Apostle, I'm a Salad Catholic. I'm a Catholic school boy, right? So I know the history. Okay. My teachers were Irish, Italians, right? I know the goddamn history. And it's time that the Americans woke up. I get so sick and tired of hearing this bullshit. And a lot of it, I tell you the honest to God truth, a lot of it is egged on by a lot of these bastards from down south. And I know that sounds kind of harsh. I feel bad because I had some good friends from the South, okay, when I was in the military. And I tell you quite frankly, I ain't a better guy to have by your side when you're walking into a fight than a good old boy from Tennessee or Bama or Mississippi, right? But unfortunately, the system that they grew up in and which still perpetuates itself today is designed to keep them ignorant and backwards. And if you think I'm lying, look at the stats. Look at the healthcare stats. Look at the educational stats, right? Look at the infrastructure. I'm just naming a few, okay? And this, these are the places that generate all this anti-immigrant hatred. Now, I must say, as a Black American, okay, my father was from the American Virgin Islands. My mother was from good old cradle of the Confederacy, Virginia. Okay, and hey, listen, I'm born and raised in New York, as you can probably tell from the accent. And I will tell you quite frankly, what Americans need to do, they need to basically acquaint themselves with their history. And see, that's one of the reasons why history is it's like a taboo subject in places like Oklahoma, Alabama, Florida, Mississippi, Arkansas, because they want people to stay ignorant. Because they're terrified that if working class whites really knew the history of this country, they would look at working class blacks, they would look at working class blacks and suddenly realize that, hey, guess what? We got more in common than we have differences. And see, that will be a problem for the quote unquote ruling class. Okay, I think that corporate America would have they would freak out. Okay, because remember, racism has cost a price not just for black folks, but for white Americans also. Okay, and that's what they're afraid of. In other words, what they're basically afraid of is they're afraid of people actually waking up. Now, I have a bone to pick with immigrants. Okay, I have a bone to pick with immigrants from the West Indies. I have a bone to pick from immigrants from Africa. I have a bone to pick with immigrants from South Asia, right? And I tell you why. Because you come here, right, and you come to America, and you fall for the bullshit. Oh, well, we have to stay away from Black Americans because they're criminals, they're blah, 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 and all this other bullshit, right? And you are taught this nonsense, not realizing, okay, the conditions that Black folks have lived in here in America for over 400 years. So you believe that, excuse me, I should say, you believe, okay, that somehow because you were sheltered to a point, oh, well, they're a model minority group. They're not like Black Americans and blah, blah, blah. They're not lazy. They're not criminals and all this other good shit, right? Well, no, that's not the case. Okay, because of the fact that you have to remember you are coming to a country that I built, okay, that American Black folks built. I'm not going to get into this whole thing about fundamental uh, uh, Black Americans because I think that's kind of ridiculous. Okay, because I guarantee you take a submarine or a deep sea dive, okay, off the west coast of Africa or in the Caribbean, I guarantee you, you're going to find the same bones of slaves and slave ships that you will find them off the coast of Brazil, off the coast of the United States, in the Caribbean, so on and so forth, right? So I'm all for you. I'm for all you immigrants, okay? But I think that you need to stop letting it get twisted, right? Latino immigrants, right? You found out the hard way. Racism is racism. And you were just a toy for Trump and MAGA. And then as soon as you outlived your usefulness, they started shipping out your wives, your husbands, even your children. Okay? Somalians, even, you should, of all, you should definitely have known better. Because Trump has no respect for nobody coming from Africa. He thinks Africa is the great shithole. Okay? That's his mind because he is a white supremacist. And to white folks, I say, white supremacists, that ain't going to save you, right? The whole idea of white supremacy is not going to save you, especially if you are a white American woman. Because basically, like for example, people, Secretary of Defense, and I'll be goddamn if I say Secretary of War. That's for Congress to do. But people like Hegseth, Trump, and what's his name, Miller, Smith, whatever, freaking that little boy-headed, weird-looking dude, they actually believe that women are supposed to be brood mares. Okay? They don't give a damn about your aspirations, your thoughts, your beliefs. Okay? As far as white men are concerned, white American men are concerned, read a book. Okay? Especially you younger ones, stop being assholes. You stop being assholes, I guarantee you, women will sleep with you. Okay? What do they call them guys? Gropers? They're mad because they can't get laid. Okay? And as an older guy, let me tell you something. Women do not like sleeping with assholes. All right? Unless you're paying them. Sorry, that slipped out. All right? I guess for my Navy time. But seriously, women do not like people who are insensitive, who have no empathy for fellow human beings. They don't like that. All right? No decent woman is going to be with a man that's not empathetic. Okay? And this whole thing about this white supremacist bullshit, hey, pal, that's not helping you. It really isn't. It's just like the what you call it, the minimum wage here in America. Black working class guys and white working class guys and women, long time ago, they should have gotten together and united to tell corporate America, listen, we are not, serfs. We deserve a decent livable wage. If they had done that, okay, we wouldn't be having these problems now. And see, hopefully, very soon, very shortly, white working class America is going to realize that this whole thing about racism and what have you, that it is not in their best interest. Okay, it truly isn't. Now we have this business of ICE. Okay, which is, to me is another symbol or another sign of the deterioration of what's happening here in the United States. This idea that Trump thinks that he's a god. Oh, I can't remember the French phrase of Louis XIV, l'état, c'est moi. I know I'm saying it ass backwards, but you get the idea. It means I am the state. Okay? And see, when Trump was talking about internet, when he was asked about international law, what did Trump say? Well, I will judge this according to my own morality. Well, that's kind of ironic, when you think about the fact that Trump don't have a morality. He has no morality. This guy is a child abuser. Okay, he is a purveyor of underage girls. So what the hell? And being a sex abuser of grown women. On top of that, this guy is a freaking peeping tom. He used to go on Howard Stern show bragging about how he used to walk to the girls' dressing rooms at the Miss America pageants. So what the hell morality is he talking about? That's what I like to know. But see, that's dangerous. And I really appreciate what the governor of California said when he was, in Davos and telling European leaders, yo, grow a freaking spine, okay, and stand up to this guy. Because in a very real sense, this is just like Munich 1938. where Chamberlain basically bent the knee and knuckled down to Adolf Hitler. And I would tell Europeans, we have a white, racist, nationalist regime in the White House, kind of like Nazi Germany. But see, the thing about hate's like syphilis, hate's like a disease, it spreads, okay? And you're going to find that if you don't put a stop to this guy, if they don't put a stop to this guy here in the United States, if they don't put a stop to him running through NATO, right, that you are going to have to deal with this clown, okay? See, eh, eh, white nationalism, it don't stop at hating dark people, okay? It doesn't stop there. It continues. Hate is like a little fire engine of its own design. Perpetual motion, I believe they call it in school. It will keep running until it's either destroyed or it burns itself out. And that's what people need to realize. Okay? Now, I will tell you quite frankly that I am in great fear because even if Trump does not get his way with Greenland and they stand up to him and they force him to back down, he's just going to try something else. And what angers me is that this is a damn sick man. Okay? Could you imagine Obama trying to get away with shit like this? Wouldn't happen. Wouldn't happen with Joe Biden, but I know damn well it would not happen with Barack Obama. And see, I fear very much that America is going to destroy itself. We're going to destroy our democracy because of racial hatred. Okay? Don't tell me about the economy. The economy ain't got shit to do with this. Only in terms of, hey, you are going to basically say, I don't trust the black Asian lady with the economy. So I'm going to give it to the criminals. Now think about that. Think about that in your own mind. Okay? What does that say about you? What does that say about your intelligence? Right? What does that say about your ability to dissect and understand facts? Right? Don't look good. Really doesn't look good. That's why people on the other side of the Atlantic and north, what is it, 40, 4850, the line between America and Canada, that's why the world thinks that we are freaking insane. But I will tell you something. What really frightens me is the fact that we, as Americans, we put in a president that, as far as I'm concerned, okay, with my background, and like I said, I'm not claiming to be an expert, but with my intel background, this guy is a Russian bot, okay? Or as the boys in CIA would say, he's an intel asset. He's an asset for Russia, for Putin. Now, you can ask why. I don't know. Some people say because Putin has pictures of him doing certain things, or because he knows about Trump and Epstein. I'm not going to go there right now because I still want to gather some more facts. But to me, it's obvious as hell. Let me put it like this. If you actually think that Donald Trump has the best interest of the United States of America and all its people at heart, if you really believe that, then you are living in a goddamn delusion. And it's time that you grew up, to be quite frank about it, because this is dangerous. Okay, where we practically declared war on our allies. Okay, you think about that. Germany, France, I believe even Britain have had to send troops to Greenland. Now, chances are that that probably is not going to happen this time. Okay, but think about what that means to the rest of the world. You threaten your allies with military force. So let me ask you something. if you have a buddy, right? You back home, you got a buddy, right? You and him or you and her, you're on street partners, you're buds, you're down with each other. How in the hell would you feel, okay, if your bud all of a sudden pulled out a gun or pulled out a knife and said, if you don't do what I say, I'm going to burn you down or I'm going to slice your throat? Now, let me ask you something. Would you be inclined to ever trust that person again? Seriously, would you? I'm curious. I'd like to know. Well, and see, this is the whole thing, the catastrophe of what Trump has done to America. And he's a guy, he loves brands and everything. Well, this is what he has done to the American brand. Because nobody, especially while any Republican is in the White House, no country of any part of the world would ever trust the United States again. Not for decades, maybe not for a generation. Seriously. I mean, would you? If I was your friend and I threatened to take your life because you won't give me what I want, would you trust me? Seriously. See, this is the kind of things that, unfortunately, a lot of American voters didn't think about. And let me leave you with this one last thought. The President of the United States, because remember that the ability to wage nuclear war is in the hands of the civilian leadership. Okay? So that means that the United States has the ability to wage thermonuclear war and to practically erase civilization in minutes. Okay? Now, think about this. After looking at Trump's behavior at Davos, do you believe that it is safe for this guy to be able to control? I mean, it's more complicated than a button, but this is what it's about. It is about being able to order thermonuclear strikes. Okay? Do you believe that Trump should be trusted? Right? Is this a guy that you can trust? Now, I don't know. Maybe you like him because of the fact that he don't like immigrants, especially dark immigrants, and you don't either. But is your civilization, is your future, is the future of your families and your children, is it worth it? Seriously, this is what you need to think about. Okay. So listen, I've had enough for the evening. Maybe you have too. I don't know. But I had to get this off my chest. In the meantime, take care of yourselves, take care of each other, and keep educating yourself. That's the important thing. All right? Get away from Fox, start reading books. Okay? Pay attention to what's going on. Listen, take care, peace, and we'll be back next time. Okay?